Saludos desde México.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. Recently, someone told a story that wasn't theirs to tell, and they told it inaccurately. So, Fidel and I are here to tell you our story accurately. We do want to cover a couple of things before we get into the reason for Fidel's deportation. The first thing that I want to start out with is an apology to all of you. When we started TikTok, we didn't know where it was going. We had no idea that it was going to grow. And we had a discussion once it started to grow that we didn't want to disclose Fidel's history. We have reasons for doing so, which I'll explain. But on our platform, and I'll put an example on the screen, I was dishonest with all of you about it. And while we had our reasons and while I felt like I had my reasons, at the end of the day, it was still dishonest, and that doesn't excuse it. So I am sorry for not being upfront with you guys. I will tell you that there have been a lot of times in our relationship and the time that I've been with Fidel, and I know prior to that in his life, where people have made very snap judgments about him. They haven't given Fidel a chance to show them who he really is. And in a way, I felt like I was protecting him. I wanted you guys to get to know him, for the man that I know and love, for, the father of my children. I wanted you to see Fidel and the amazing person that he is. And it wasn't right for me to hide that, but, and it's not an excuse. Since the beginning of our, initial growth on TikTok and then our other platforms, I think Fidel and I have had very specific goals with what we've wanted to accomplish with our platform. And we have done the very best that we could to use our platform as a force of good. We have, of course, opinions about the immigration system in the United States that we have expressed with you guys. And we have opinions about Mexico and how it's portrayed in the media and just different things like that. We've always wanted to help other families that are like ours. And at the end of this, we want you guys to, we ask that you guys watch this and listen to our story. And then at the end of it, we ask that you make up your own mind about it. And if you decide to stay, then we are grateful and we're glad that you're here. There is a fly, right? And if you decide that you don't want to be a part of it anymore, we completely understand. But tomorrow we will continue with our journey and we will continue sharing our beautiful family. Ahí está la mosca. We will continue sharing our beautiful family with you and our life in Mexico. We'll continue to help the families that we've already connected with, and we'll help any family that comes across our content in the future. We will continue sharing our story and our opinion and fighting for those families and individuals who are affected by deportation. And we will continue to show you how beautiful Mexico is. This fly is gonna drive me crazy, but we're gonna keep going. So with that being said, the only other thing that we want to cover is we have never asked for anything from you except for your support and engagement with our platforms. For example, our YouTube channel was started when you guys wanted to help us get to our goal of building our home, and you absolutely have done that in a time frame that we never expected, something we thought would take us 10 years to do. And we have had Cash App and Venmo available for you guys. We have had people who have sent, those things for a variety of different reasons, and we've always appreciated it. However, at the end of this, if you decide that you sent something like that for maybe the kids' birthday or something to that effect, and you would like that back, please just let us know. We're more than happy to do that. And with all of that being said, now we are going to tell you the accurate story of why Fidel was deported from the United States. So what we're going to do is go through each of Fidel's charges. The first one happened when Fidel was 19 years old. It was not in the state of Utah, it was in another state, and it was a DUI. It was a misdemeanor DUI. Fidel pled guilty to it. He was deported. ¿Y cuánto tiempo tú es con la primero DUI en México?
Solamente un día, la verdad. Al siguiente día me volví a regresar.
So he didn't come down and visit his mom. He was left at the border and then immediately returned to the United States, of course, without proper documentation. So fast forward a little bit, Fidel moved to Utah and began working in Utah. Fidel and I met, and in 2008, Fidel was pulled over. I think he was coming back from work. With the second one, yeah. He was coming back from work, and he was pulled over. He was charged with a couple different things. All of those things except for one was dismissed in his case. The first thing that he was charged with was a driving under the influence of alcohol and drugs. I'm going to put this up on the screen because I have it on another screen so you guys can see it. It was driving under the influence of alcohol/drugs. He had open container drinking alcohol in the vehicle. He had a use or possession of drug paraphernalia. And ¿qué es la cosa tú tienen contigo?
Cannabis. Papeles de cannabis.
Yeah, he had rolling papers.
Cannabis.
Yeah. And he had a fail to operate within a single lane. He had move unsafe vehicle, and driving on a suspended license, which those of you who are in Utah may be familiar with those driving on suspended licenses. I feel like a lot of you may know what those are like. So he did plead guilty to a felony DUI. It was a felony because he had a previous DUI. And the open container was dismissed. The drug paraphernalia was dismissed. The fail to operate was dismissed. The move unsafe vehicle was dismissed. And the driving on suspended license was dismissed. Fidel went through a couple different things. He missed the first court date on that. He consulted an attorney and then ended up going to court. And he was told that all of the time would be suspended, but he was to follow up with a probation officer. Fidel did not follow up with a probation officer. You're definitely going to see some interruptions in this because Diego and Dominic are downstairs. So Fidel ultimately didn't follow up with a probation officer. ¿Por qué no vámonos en habla con la... I don't know how to say probation.
Lo que pasa fue en dos errores. Una, bueno, yo quería arreglar eso. Nomás fueron dos cosas que no lo hice. Porque el sobre llegó a diferente dirección. Y cuando yo hablé con él, bueno, después de que pasó todo ese proceso, me dijo, bueno, tú, me dijo, pues, ¿por qué no viniste? Si tú hubieras comprobado que ese sobre no llegó al número 1, yo tuviera otra oportunidad. Y yo no me presenté, me dio miedo porque me dijo el oficial que si yo no me presentaba me iban a deportar, o sea, me iba a meter a la cárcel, entonces dije, me va a deportar. Y fue la razón que no me presenté, pero no, fue también un poco culpa mía por el sobre, que no fue a la dirección.
So, he missed the first opportunity, right? And he also felt like he was going to get deported, so he didn't go. Fidel and I continued our relationship. We got pregnant and had Diego. And in 2011, the very end of 2011, right before Diego turned 2, we had a domestic violence incident. Let me scroll down to that so that I can tell you what those charges were. While we won't get into all of the details of the domestic violence, I will tell you that Fidel and I both had equal parts in that incident. But we were in Utah, so I'll leave that at that. Fidel was ultimately charged with one count of assault, Class B misdemeanor, and he was also charged with domestic violence in the presence of a child. I declined to press charges against Fidel. However, the state of Utah still reserves the right to, and they pursued those charges without a cooperating witness, which was me. I will tell you also that Diego was not in the room with us. In Utah, if a child is present in the residence, not present in front of the fight or whatever's happening, they still make it domestic violence in the presence of a child. So they could be 3 stories down in the same residence and it's still in the presence of a child. When we went through all of this, Fidel had an outstanding warrant for not following up with probation for the 2008 case. So when all of this happened, they, of course, found that warrant. Fidel went to court on the domestic violence. Him and I had a discussion. He had a public attorney. In between all of these, we had been consulting with attorneys to figure out if there was a way that we could, ultimately fix Fidel's status in the United States. And of course, it was difficult. We were getting different answers. We unfortunately got taken advantage of a couple of times. Honestly, it was a mess. It was a mess. And it was super discouraging. And honestly, we stopped trying after a little bit, but back to the domestic violence. So Fidel went to court, and when he went to court, Fidel and I had made a decision. The attorney told us you can stay and fight it, but ultimately you're still going to be deported at the end of it. And so Fidel pled guilty because he didn't want to try and fight it. He wanted to just be deported. So he didn't fight it. He was found guilty of it, or he pled guilty. And then they moved him to the other county where the DUI was. And at that county, he was sentenced to serve a certain amount of time, and then he was turned over to immigration and ultimately deported. He was deported. He was here in Mexico for 3 months. That was actually the last time that Fidel...
Sí, 3 meses.
3 meses, no? That was actually the last time that Fidel got to see his grandfather. He hadn't seen his grandpa since he was 17. And when he came back here, he got to spend time with his grandpa, and then he returned to the United States. And later that year, he actually lost his grandpa. So we always, it was a really, really terrible situation, but we always we tried to find kind of a bright side, not bright side, but a positive in it. And that was that Fidel got to spend time with his abuelo.
Mi abuelo.
That time.
Sí, mi abuelo me dijo que no me fuera para allá. Ya me dijo, quédate acá. Pero Diego estaba chiquito, entonces tenía que rezar por Diego porque, pues, teníamos que seguir nosotros con... Bueno, yo más que nada tenía que seguir porque mis padres me enseñaron a no dejar a nuestros hijos tirados y pues para mí fue eso. Mi Diego era lo más importante y por eso me tuve que rezar otra vez para atrás, porque yo quería estar con Diego y ver su crecimiento de mi hijo. Entonces mi abuelo me dijo, quédate aquí, ya no te regreses. Y yo le dije, no, tengo que cuidar de mi hijo. Y me tuve que regresar otra vez. No lo pensé y me regresé a cuidar a Diego. Y ayudarle a Candice para poder sacar adelante a Diego. Y no me arrepiento. No me arrepiento de eso porque ahora tengo a Diego conmigo a un lado, también a Candice. Entonces eso me dio, no me importó regresar otra vez para atrás. Yo sabía que si algo me pasaba o cualquier cosa, pero por mi hijo, mi abuelo me dijo, no te vayas, y entonces me tuve que marchar otra vez para atrás. Pero hoy que estamos aquí de regreso, la verdad que, pues, no es como la vida para mis hijos, pero yo estoy feliz de que tenga yo a Candice y a Diego.
So, that year after Fidel came back, we fought like hell for our marriage. Nosotros chingases por nosotros matrimonio, por nosotros familia. We fought like hell for our family, for our marriage. We wanted to do better. We wanted to be better. We wanted to make it work. We wanted our family together, and that's what we accomplished. Honestly, that's what we accomplished. So that brings us up to 2016. In 2016, the story that most of you are familiar with from our channel, if you've seen it, Fidel was at work. They were moving tools from one job site to another job site. The car was stopped. Fidel was not driving. The officer said he needed to verify that they weren't stealing the tools. They were in a company vehicle, and they asked everybody for their ID, and Fidel couldn't produce one. And when Fidel gave them his name, that's when we found out that there was a warrant out for Fidel. Utah has a law that when somebody is charged with a crime, I don't know exactly how it works, They leave an open warrant. If they're charged with a crime and then deported, they leave an open warrant. And that open warrant basically is there, I guess, as a failsafe for Utah so that they can find out if you come back into the state of Utah after you've been removed from the country or removed by immigration. We had no idea that that was in place. And so when Fidel gave him his name, they ran it, they found the warrant, they took Fidel into custody. Fidel had to go to court on the DUI from 2008. The judge gave him the rest of the sentence to serve in jail. Fidel served that in jail, and then he was turned over to immigration. And when he was turned over to immigration, the U.S. Marshals actually called me. And because at the time we were already married. I mean, we got married while Fidel was being held on that DUI warrant for failure. Well, the warrant was for failure to, fulfill it or whatever. So they called me and they said, the United States government is charging your husband with felony reentry. And it was the U.S. Marshals. And our world was already spinning out of control. At this time, Fidel and I had already discussed moving to Mexico. Diego and I had got our passports. And we had no idea that was going to happen. That was something that the president at the time was pushing very hard on. And that's what they were doing. They were cracking down on things like that. And Fidel had, other previous reentries into the United States. And so he very much got hit with that. Fidel went to court in federal court. He went to federal court in Utah. The letters that I read to you, those were the letters that my family wrote on Fidel's behalf. Our priest wrote on Fidel's behalf. Members of our community wrote on Fidel's behalf. And a majority of my family was sitting in that courtroom when Fidel was charged and ultimately sentenced. He did plead guilty to it. We informed the judge that we were, moving to Mexico. That was our plan. We provided our passports. Diego and I, Diego was also in court that day. We provided all of that, and we asked for him to be released to immigration so that he could be deported. The judge very much made an example of Fidel. She wanted to give him 11 months, but Fidel's public defender asked for 12 months and a day so Fidel could receive good time. And he was then given 12 months and a day. They took him, he was in a couple different federal prisons because they kind of moved them around a lot, but ultimately landed in Texas. And he was in Texas for 7 months, and then he was released and deported. When he was deported, he was given a permanent bar from the United States. If you talk to an immigration attorney, they will tell you that a permanent bar is not exactly a permanent bar in that sense. There are waivers that you can file. You can, work on getting things expunged from your record and things like that. We came down... 4 días, ¿no? Después tu deportación. Sí. Nosotros aquí como 4 días.
Una semana después.
Ya.
Entonces acá en México.
Por 2 semanas.
Por 2 semanas. Porque queríamos ver si podíamos empezar aquí.
Sí, es trabajo por nosotros, por Diego.
Y sí, de tu reto para los estados como a 2 semanas. Fue cuando pensé que no ibas a regresar con los chavalos porque no te iba a gustar aquí. No le iba a gustar a Diego. Pero después de 2 meses, 3 meses regresaron para acá.
Yeah, we came back in 3 months.
Mandaron sus cosas, la verdad que.
Yeah. And we've been here for 6 years. Fidel and I have had a lot of discussions about the permanent bar, and we've talked to a lot of attorneys that we trust about it. And we know that we can fight. And we know that that is an option. We know that it wouldn't be an easy fight and that it wouldn't be a guarantee, but we know that we can fight. But we are very, very happy in Mexico. We love our life here. We don't want to go back to the United States. That's not something that we're interested in doing. And we aren't willing to go through the financial fight of that. We're not willing to go through the emotional fight of that. Right now, our family is happy and healthy and together, and it's honestly all that we could ask for. So that is Fidel's entire criminal history in the United States and the reason that he was ultimately deported from the U.S.
Pues sí, entonces como ustedes ven ya mi esposa decidió, vimos lo que le platiqué, todo lo que pasó, entonces ya, bueno, bueno, yo ahorita lo que les digo a todas las personas, les pido disculpas a todos los seguidores por lo que pasó en mi pasado. Yo la verdad que de esas experiencias he tenido muchas cosas. Ahora que estoy también, ahora que después también con mis hijos, yo también he sido una persona a lo mejor no muy perfecta, pero yo amo a mis hijos y a mi esposa. Entonces, sí he cambiado muchas cosas, la verdad, aunque no lo crean después de que Diego vino al mundo. Entonces, eso fue las primeras cosas que me hicieron cambiar muchas cosas y hemos echado chingazos al matrimonio porque hemos tenido momentos también bonitos, momentos que nos han duros, pero hemos salido adelante. Eso no nos ha detenido y hasta ahorita seguimos juntos y lo seguiremos porque tenemos dos hijos muy hermosos y seguiremos trabajando para ellos. Yo ante todo pues le pido disculpas a todos los seguidores. Espero que me den una oportunidad de demostrarles que las personas también podemos cambiar. Yo he cambiado muchas cosas, he cambiado mucho. Entonces pues o sea, que también tienen derecho a juzgarme, pero también hay cosas buenas que hoy en día le agradezco también a mi esposa porque he cambiado muchas cosas. Entonces, pues gracias a mi esposa por aguantarme, soportarme estos años y a mis hijos. Entonces, pues yo aquí puro para adelante, para atrás ya no hay regreso. Entonces, las cosas que pasaron en el pasado se quedaron en el pasado. Yo ahora miro hacia enfrente y trato de ser una persona mejor y hablo con mis amigos también de las cosas que hice o que hice con mal. Entonces les digo porque es mal eso. Entonces no les toque a ustedes eso, vayan a trabajen y hagan de su vida una cosa mejor. Entonces pues yo a todos, ante todo les pido una disculpa y a los seguidores, más que nada a los seguidores de nuestros seguidores que nos siguen, y una disculpa a todos.
I think at the end of this, we hope that you've been able to see our family for who we are now and not our past mistakes. We are human beings. We have past mistakes, but we have definitely shown you how much we have fought for our family and how much we've changed and grown, and our beautiful life here that we are incredibly thankful for every single day. So we appreciate each and every one of you listening and letting us tell you our story. And if you're here tomorrow when we continue, then we are incredibly grateful to have you here. And we hope that you enjoy being a part of our journey. And if you aren't here tomorrow, we understand, completely and fully understand.